He had a Word document on a hard drive in his basement. It had sections labeled targets, supplies, body prep, and things to remember. Under things to remember, he had written use heavier rope and don't charge gas. He was an architect by trade, a husband and a father. He had a house in the suburbs where he grew up, and for at least 30 years, he was also a serial killer operating out of Long Island. This is Rex Heuermann and the Gilgo Beach murders. There was a house on First Avenue in Massapequa Park, Long Island, that Rex Heuermann lived in for nearly his entire life. He grew up there as a kid, bought it from his mother in 1994, and raised his own family inside it. Neighbors thought it was a bit spooky looking, always slightly run down looking, the sort of house where kids dare each other to go ring the doorbell. The man who lived there was, by all outward appearances, just a large, somewhat disheveled architect who commuted to Midtown Manhattan and mostly kept to himself. He ran his own firm, RH Consultants and Associates, built a professional reputation over the decades, had a wife, 2 kids, and a personality that coworkers described as socially awkward but professionally competent. In the way suburban Long Island produces people who are just quietly there, occupying space without much ceremony, Rex Heuermann seemed thoroughly unremarkable, other than his size. He was also, as of April 2026, confirmed a serial killer who had been operating out of that house since at least 1993. Rex Andrew Heuermann was born September 13, 1963. Long Island's South Shore in the early 60s ran on post-war suburban aspiration, a place where you kept the lawn trimmed, you kept the front door painted, and projected normalcy outward without asking too many questions about what was behind it. His father, Theodore, was a World War II veteran, a former Air Force second lieutenant, an aerospace engineer, and a cabinet maker. That blend of technical precision and physical craft left a mark, pulling Rex toward architecture, a field that required the same synthesis of abstract spatial planning and hands-on execution. Theodore died in 1975, when Rex was 11 or 12. His mother, Dolores, ran the household after that, and neighbors described her as very controlling. Classmates at Berner High School remembered Rex as towering, quiet, intelligent, and a consistent target for bullying. The actor, William Baldwin, recalled him as largely on the margins, which, right, is exactly where you want to be if you're the biggest person in the room and somehow invisible to most of it. He earned his architecture degree from New York Institute of Technology and became very good at designing structures and even better at constructing facades. By the mid-90s, the surface-level narrative was tidy. He'd bought the house from his mother, started the firm, married a Swedish woman named Asa Ellerup in 1996, had 2 children, an ordinary Long Island commuter life with nothing about it to suggest otherwise. Sandra Castilla was 28 years old when she was killed in November of 1993. Her remains were found in North Sea, New York. Heuermann admitted to her murder as part of his April 2026 guilty plea. Valerie Mack followed in 2000, her remains scattered between the Manorville Woods and Cedar Beach at Gilgo. Jessica Taylor disappeared in 2003 and was also dismembered, her remains found in 2 separate locations, years and miles apart. The gaps between these crimes stretched from months to years. He was patient, and with each one, he was getting better at this. Forensic investigators later recovered a Word document from a hard drive in his basement. It read like an internal project brief, with sections for targets, dump sites, supplies, body prep, and a section called Things to Remember. Under supplies, he had listed burlap, acid, police scanners, and booties. Under Things to Remember, use heavier rope and don't charge gas. The top entry under problems was DNA. He was designing his crimes around the forensic science that might eventually catch him, updating his approach between the killings the way any professional revises their plan after a bad site inspection. Between 2007 and 2010, 4 more women disappeared from the South Shore. Maureen Brainard-Barnes, a mother of 2 facing eviction who was fighting to keep her family in their home, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. All 4 were petite and in their 20s. All 4 were found wrapped in camouflage burlap along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach in December 2010, when a police dog on a completely unrelated missing person search wandered off its assigned path and stumbled across Maureen's remains. A dog, following its nose, found what years of investigative work had not. After Melissa Barthelemy disappeared, someone began calling her teenage sister from Melissa's own phone. The calls were extended, taunting, and sadistic. Investigators believe that caller was Rex. Whatever he got from the crimes themselves apparently was not enough. He wanted to reach out to the people who love these women the most and keep the damage going. In 2010, a witness placed a very tall man in a green Chevy Avalanche near one of the victims' dump sites. That description was documented and filed. In 2012, a federal report used cell tower data to conclude the Gilgo killer likely lived in Massapequa Park and worked in Midtown Manhattan. That report was delivered to the Suffolk County Police Department and was effectively ignored. Standard cell tower analysis that could have linked Heuermann to his burner phones to his personal devices was never performed. Investigators had a working profile of their suspect in their own files and walked right past it for over a decade. The reason for all of that is James Burke. Burke became Suffolk County Police Chief in 2012 and moved quickly to consolidate power, removing veteran detectives who had found the Gilgo Beach 4 and held the most institutional knowledge of the case. He blocked his department from sharing information with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, the specialists trained to build criminal profiles in exactly these situations. He stated justification and departmental pride. His actual motivation was keeping the FBI away from himself personally. Burke had his own complicated history with sex workers, and an FBI investigation circling the Gilgo murders was a situation that he could not afford. Then, in 2012, a man named Christopher Loeb stole a bag from Burke's personal SUV. Inside the bag were sex toys and pornography. Burke then had Loeb assaulted in custody and then organized a cover-up that consumed the SCPD's senior leadership for years. Burke was eventually convicted of federal civil rights violations and he served time. The Gilgo Beach investigation sat dormant through all of that. One man's need to conceal his own behavior gave a serial killer extra years he never should have had. In February 2022, new Commissioner Rodney Harrison formed the Gilgo Beach Homicide Task Force. They went back to the 2010 Chevy Avalanche witness description, cross-referenced it with vehicle registrations in Massapequa Park, and Rex Heuermann surfaced almost immediately. Investigators began surveillance, watching him add minutes to prepaid burner phones and then use those phones to contact sex workers. Analysis of his email accounts turned up thousands of searches for the Gilgo investigation, the victims' families, and also violent pornography. He'd been following coverage of the search for himself in real time. He thought he was still ahead of them. In January 2023, investigators followed Heuermann to his Manhattan office at lunchtime. He ate pizza, and he tossed the crust into a street trash can and went back inside. They retrieved it. DNA from that crust matched a male hair recovered from Megan Waterman's remains. DNA from trash outside the Rex Heuermann home matched hairs found on 3 other victims to his wife, Asa Ellerup, who had no involvement in the crimes. What that evidence established was that those women had been inside of that house on First Avenue, in the basement, in what Heuermann would later call his kill room. He was arrested in July 2023. In April 2026, Rex Heuermann pleaded guilty. Before the public allocution, he met privately with his family, setting the terms of his own confession with the same careful deliberateness that he brought to everything else. He described 4-day rituals surrounding each murder, stopwatch time body disposals, windows calculated for when his wife and children were out of the state. He had been doing this since 1993 across 30 years and 8 victims. Maureen, Melissa, Megan, Amber, Sandra, Valerie, Jessica, and Karen. They were real women with families who spent years waiting for answers, treated by institutions as people whose disappearances didn't quite warrant the same urgency as someone else's. New York State has since passed the Sex Worker Immunity Act, the Survivor's First Act, and broader reforms of how law enforcement handles missing and murdered women, particularly women of color. Those 8 names are attached to actual changes in the law. Rex Heuermann built a lot of things across 30 years, a career, a reputation, a domestic facade convincing enough that his own wife never saw what was behind it. The last thing he built was a confession, and it arrived 3 decades too late. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. I'm Joe. Hello. I'm the host. And here's an email. Subject, your consistency is underrated. Hey, Joe. I was thinking the other day about how rare it is for a podcast to stay consistent over time. A lot of shows start strong and then slowly turn to inside jokes and rambling. Yours still feels focused and intentional, which is probably why I've stuck around so long. Random question, though. Do you ever take a full break from listening to podcasts, or are you always consuming something in the background? Rachel in Cary, North Carolina. Rachel, thank you for listening for so long, and also thank you for reaching out. And to answer your question, yeah, I'm almost always listening to something in the background, or I'm researching something for the podcast. In the background, not always podcasts. Like currently, I'm trying to work my way through The Stand by Stephen King. And it's a full-blown marathon. It's very long, but it's also really good. So it's not always true crime-related stuff that I've got going on in my life. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts before I started doing my own, and I cut way back on that because I needed that time to research for this podcast, as well as my newer podcast, True Crime Blueprint, which, by the way, my ADHD brain wants to remind you that if you thought today's episode was interesting, there's a longer version of the Gilgo Beach murders on True Crime Blueprint. It's out right now, and you can go listen to it right now. Whereas this one is 10 minutes talking about this case. That one on True Crime Blueprint is like 30 minutes talking about this case. I go into a lot more detail about everything surrounding it and everything that went on with the case, and specifically more about what went on with Sheriff Burke. All right, if you're a new listener to the podcast, welcome. Make sure you put your feet up, get comfortable, because there are literally hundreds of back episodes for you to catch up on. And more importantly, make sure you hit subscribe to 10-Minute Murder. You can also go to 10minutemurder.com. There you'll find links to listen in different places. Also links to where you can find me on social media. That's at 10minutemurder.com. And that's going to do it. That's your episode for today. Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Murder. See you next time.